So the Big Ten title game goes to the team who is a new member in the Big Ten, that being the Oregon Ducks. What a hell of a game. Now, I'm going to be real to the Big Ten fans. I miss, as an SEC, a person who grew up in the SEC, I miss Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson a little. I'm just going to be real with you. I don't like Gary as much sometimes, more than I like Herb Street, but I missed him. It was good to see a real, true, full game in there listening to them. But Oregon beats Penn State. Joe, your thoughts on the game?
This game was frustrating to watch for Oregon fans because the beginning of it, you're thinking, oh my God, Oregon is just kicking the crap out of Penn State. They were playing truly up to the expectation that they were super balanced and dominant on both sides of the football. But Kotelnicki started to settle down a little bit more, and the run game started to kick up. And I really appreciated that Kotelnicki decided to start to work in Allar as a rusher as much as he did. And to see this finish for Katron Allen, who had 124 yards, and Nick Singleton, who had 104 on 10 carries, and then, as I mentioned, Allar 5 for 54. The fact that they understood this is our strength, we need to stop trying to get overly complicated with this. We're going to run the damn ball, and it worked. Oregon is deservedly going to be, and we're going to talk about this at the end of the show, they deserve to be one of the few teams that's considered in the best positioning to win a national title this year.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment.
Their offense is loaded with playmakers, like we saw with the way that Tez Johnson played, that Jordan James played, the way that Dylan Gabriel played. But their defense has a legitimate concern for the way that they were unable to slow down Penn State's rushing attack. And I think that if Oregon gets upset and they get knocked off before the national title game, it's going to be because they square off with somebody who finally figures out how to run the ball and to get a stop here or there against Oregon's offense.
So to talk about Oregon before we get to Penn State, I would just say that, man, what a hell of a fight by both teams.
Yeah.
What a hell of a fight. And Penn State could have rested on their laurels and just fell down and said, no, we're not going to do it. You know, I see everybody talking about that way for SMU, like, hey, man, they could have just sat there and let Clemson run all over them. Well, what about Penn State? That game was on at the same time. What game were you really watching here? It was Penn State that kept clawing back. First, let me start out with them offensively. Joe, you know how much I love Dylan Gabriel, man. I mean, he is – I mean, half of his completions went to Tez Johnson, so – I get that. He had 22 completions, and Tez Johnson had 11 catches. But there comes a part where I'm just asking myself, are they peaking? Offensively, I feel like that they could be peaking. Now, they got to get better in the run game. They must get better on third down. Must. Because, Joe, every time I feel like that they need some short yardage late in the game, like it did against Penn State and Ohio State, they could not line up and run and get the yard, right? It's going to backfire on them. Offensively, Joe, I got to be real with you. I think they're peaking. I love Dylan Gabriel.
Wait, when you say peaking, though, can you like, are you saying that they're hitting a ceiling, or are you saying that they're about to get
not a ceiling? When I talk about peaking, I feel like they're hitting the rhythm. Like, for example,
okay, got you.
The rhythm that they went along with offensively yesterday was insane. I mean, like, you haven't really utilized the tight end, okay, in the last couple of weeks. I mean, you kind of did, you kind of didn't. But then you come out and you attack an area of weakness.
Yeah.
You attack a scheme. And then you come back, and, Joe, they want to take it away from you. They want to take some of the wheel routes away from you. They open up the middle of the field, and Tez Johnson goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And no, I'm not talking about the cereal, right? Like, it comes down to, I felt like because Gabriel was making all the right decisions, man, it was a thing of beauty to watch. You don't score that many points over and over again and think that I'm just not going to come after you and say, hey, man, they look so crisp offensively. But here was the thing for me, too. Against a defense that had shown that they're not like that, right? Like, Penn State had not been giving up over 35 points a game. It's not like something that we had seen earlier. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to add, they only had one sack. Penn State only had one sack in this game. Right. That's the craziest part.
But see, the thing here is that you had a barometer of how the game could go when you watch them take on Ohio State. I thought that Ohio State receiving corps would be the one that ultimately would take over. They kind of did, I guess, in some instances. Joe, it's the Oregon wide receiver room and Tez Johnson that's like, no, I kind of thought that that's what Ohio State would look like in reference to how they're just out athleting dudes. No, it was Oregon. Joe, they're out athleting everybody. Everywhere offensively, they just got better dudes than you do. That's how I continue to feel about them offensively. We're going to talk about this in a moment, though. Defensively, boy, did I take an outright beating after week 7 from Oregon fans. You allowed a team to run on you for over 292 yards of rushing. They got beat up in the interior. They got their asses whooped. That's just the bottom line truth. And I know that we have a lot of people that are Oregon fans. I love you. I picked you twice last year to win this whole thing, and you let me down. I do love you. There comes a part where you got to acknowledge being run on for 300 yards offensively. That is insanity. Joe, of the 293, I mean, you have two guys and running backs that have over 100. So not only did they had almost another 100 yards rushing, not based off of what anything the running back duo did. That's very electric. That's insanity. So, Joe, offensively, I think they're hitting a ceiling. But man, their run defense had been leaky all year long, man, and it came to fruition in this one. But they were able to respond and hold on here. In reference to Penn State, here's what I'd say. I feel like they're just a couple players away. I really do.
Are you saying this season or just like in the future?
No, just in the future. I mean, like I've seen them go up against Ohio State and Oregon and throw punches. It's not like, Joe, last year what happened? They got physically abused by those teams. This year they're at the 1 yard line and they can't get in. And then this year they're trading punches. I mean, that's a 7-point game at the end there. And then they have a bad turnover, and it was what it was. But they were throwing punch for punch, and I was like, oh, shit. Like this team's – I feel like if this team had a dynamic dude on the outside, it would be more even. And they didn't have that. They had Tyler Warren.
I see what you're saying, but, I mean, I'm going to take this step forward to be complimentary of Penn State. I think that Penn State's the most quietly dangerous team in the playoff.
Oh, well, look at the teams they're facing off against.
Right. They were given an extremely easy path to deal with SMU, who is not equipped to match up with Penn State's defensive line. And then they get to beat the crap out of Boise State. I thought that this game, as you're talking about here, shows that they're more capable of competing in these matchups. That tells me in the playoff that they could pull out an unexpected victory. I don't know if that is at the current moment, but if they were to finish in the national title game, maybe lose in the national title game, or just even get to the quarterfinal, I would not be surprised. I don't look at them losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game and think to myself, oh man, that's so disappointing. Oh, same old Penn State. James Franklin can't win the big game. Yeah, maybe it's disappointing you didn't win the Big Ten championship game, but I feel like after the way that they ran the football and the way that Drew Allar made some good plays, didn't play his cleanest game, probably one of his worst games that we've seen in some time, I feel like this team has a lot that they can turn to and feel great about and to build confidence and to think to themselves, that's the best team in the country. Maybe we could get a rematch with them in the national championship game because we're able to go toe-to-toe with them, and they almost came back on them. This Penn State team is more legit than people realize.
Well, we'll talk about this during the entire playoff. They got SMU. They would have SMU, Boise, and then Georgia.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's improbable for them that they could beat Georgia. I really think that they could. I don't know if I trust James Franklin.
All right. Well, thank you for saying what I just said here, or I was going to say here.
Okay.
So if they can run the football in Oregon, they can run the football on a lot of teams in reference to talent. I'm going to keep saying this, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. You let teams continue to run the ball on you like that, you're going to get your ass whooped. I'm telling you, it's coming. You're going to get your ass whooped. You know what here's another thing. I know that Penn State was down. Could you imagine if they started playing a little slower and just lining up? Like if they would have gotten a lead early and the roles would have been flipped and they were running the ball like that and could have bled the clock. I mean,
but that's what I'm saying. That's like they've got the structure
now,
of a team that can do it.
But they are a dude away. I'm serious. They are a dude away on the Joe. Their wide receiver, I think, was it Jermaine something? I don't remember. He was falling down on a 2-yard hitch route.
You talking about Amari Evans? Are you talking about
maybe Six? Whoever Six is. Six is falling down because he's losing balance when he's catching a hitch route. Like that's uncoordination.
I was just gonna say before we move on to this next game.
Okay.
I agree with you. If they could pull a big receiver in the portal, kind of like Oregon did this past cycle, but I think we can both agree Drew Aller needs to go back for another year. Like Drew Aller has a lot of good traits and is a really nice player. But imagine if he came back for one more season at Penn State, how much better he could get, and if they did get some receivers.
Oh heavens! They
got to get him to stay.
Well, he's got to get himself to stay. I mean, NIL is a thing here,
right?
So we'll see. All right.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.